Uvalde County 911. Yes, there was just an accident right there behind Robb's school. Behind Robb's, they ran into the ditch.
What kind of vehicle?
It's a pickup. It's one truck. It's a pickup truck.
It was May 22nd, 2022, behind Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, when this truck crashed. The person called 911. Two people approached the truck.
Oh my God, they're running. I don't know why. Oh my God, he has to die.
But what was thought to be a simple traffic crash turned out to be anything but. 19 little kids and 2 teachers lost their lives that day, and you saw the footage. That's where it all started, just a car in the ditch, a frantic 911 call, a patrol officer trying to figure out what he's got. You've seen the news reports and the headlines that read about 77 minutes this and cowardice that. And frankly, there are fair criticisms about the police response, but a lot of people have used this case just to beat up on the badge. We're going to use footage, 911 calls, and reports to dismantle 10 specific myths that have been floating around since May of 2022. Nobody wants to see children hurt. It's very easy to be an armchair quarterback when you have that benefit of hindsight. So John, after listening to that 911 call, from the headset perspective, do you see any cracks in the system so far?
Wake up, America. It's the Comm Center, Drew Breezy. Drew asked me that question because I'm an actual 911 dispatcher. I've been doing that job in my community for 11 years. My name's John. I'm joined, as always, by my podcasting partner with police experience. That's authentic cop, Drew Breezy. We're covering Uvalde, the saddest day in police and school history in this country, at least in recent memory. So far, I haven't heard anything on that 911 call, and I know that we're going to be addressing a lot of the aspects of the response to the shooting at Robb Elementary, including 911 dispatchers. Tonight is a special night. We are live. If you are watching tonight and you have commentary, you can call in and you can talk to Drew. Drew is a police officer for 29 years, and he's been researching this case, and he's ready to debate you. You can feel passionate. We can have discourse without discord on here. It's going to evoke big feelings, and it might be a big night, and we're ready for it. So if you want to talk to us, you can definitely do that. You can text the number at the bottom of your screen, and that will send a text message directly to my phone. And then when we are ready to have you on the line, I will call you back. So text me your name, and if you have a specific thing you want to talk about, so I have a little bit of a heads up, I'd appreciate it. But you can text me at any time, and when it's time for phone calls, we will get to you in the order that we received you. Drew, you have an asset. You want to talk about Uvalde? I'll hand it off to you, sir.
All right. Well, first things first, we need to treat this very sensitively, and it's all about the victims in this whole thing. There are 19 little kids. We have a photo we'll show at the end.
And 2 teachers. 19
little kids and 2 teachers. The thing that struck me when I was looking at those little kids' faces in preparation for this is that none of them made it to 12 years old. So it's just it's a horrific event, and emotions have been raw for this case for many, many years. But recently there was just a trial with Adrian Gonzalez, I think is his name. All of a sudden I'm blank. Where he was charged with, I think, the 19 counts of, failing to help these kids, and he was acquitted. And I've been saying this all along. Like, it's very hard to talk about this without sounding like I'm making excuses, but I'm not.
I think that's very important to say. We've got to lay down one thing right now, because I've done this before. I've gotten on this in other channels, and I've talked about controversial things, and I've done my best to explain myself straightforwardly and dispassionately. And the internet is a place that's powered by outrage, and I get nothing but vitriol back. So I'm going to explain my point of view to you very, very distinctly right now. When it comes to the actions of Ramos, when it comes to the actions of Uvalde Police Department, the Consolidated School District PD, the other agencies responding, and anything else we discuss on this channel, you can understand a topic without condoning anyone that was involved in that. And I think it's important, particularly if we're going to continue to protect children and if we're going to increase the morale of police officers who are still the only ones who are standing between children and the next madman who decides to pick up a firearm and go to a school. If we're going to protect children and if we're going to edify those police officers, we do need to understand, we do need to care. But that said, I don't want you to take anything that I say as necessarily defending anyone. I've been told before that, cops will defend anything. And Drew, you will walk into this where we talk about the thin blue line being a wall that covers things up and shuts down conversations, and it isn't transparent. But we can understand something without condoning it, Drew.
We can understand it without condemning it as well. And there is and I appreciate what you're saying here. And it was an unprecedented amount of transparency in this thing, as we're about to see. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to run through a little bit of ProPublica, PBS, Texas Tribune's documentary called The Response of Uvalde, The Response at Uvalde, or something to that effect. I think it's very well done. It's comprehensive, but there are some issues that I see pretty glaring in it in some of the editing. Nothing crazy. And again, it's not to defend. So let's get straight.
County 901. Yes, there was just an accident right there behind Robb's school.
Behind Robb?
They ran into the ditch.
What kind, how many vehicles?
It's a pickup. It's one truck. It's a pickup truck.
Two witnesses approach the vehicle and the driver starts shooting.
Oh my God, they're running. I don't know why. Oh my God, he has a gun.
The dispatcher calls for police to respond.
If I can have you around to 715 Oak Greenville Road, have a one vehicle accident, white pickup truck crashed in the ditch. Have a caller advising male subject has a gun. Shots fired, shots fired.
I heard the word gun.
All right. So the reason I played that first is because it contained the 911 call. This is the 911 call that kicked it off that people don't really understand or know or talk about. Uvalde itself, the city of Uvalde, is not a very large police department to begin with. And the people responsible for responding to this are the Uvalde CISD, which is the Consolidated Independent School District. I think that's what CISD stands for. So the school district had their own police department. That's where Chief Pete Arredondo worked. And I think that they had a total of, at the time of this shooting, something in the lines of like maybe 12 officers for 9 schools, but they also had administrative positions. So
I think it was just 6 actual officers amongst.
That sounds right.
They had gone up from 4 to 6. Go ahead.
It sounds right. And not everybody was there that day anyway. And it's important to know that Robb Elementary didn't have an officer assigned. Most elementaries in the United States don't have an officer assigned to them. A lot of them will have these programs where the officers kind of transfer in and transfer out. So this 911 call came in to with the truck crashing, but there was a 911 call prior to that even. So this brought everybody to Robb Elementary. There was a 911 call prior to that, which you can look up on your own. And it has to do with the same guy who stole this pickup truck from his grandmother, the shooter, whose name I'm not going to bring up. He shot his grandmother in the face. So that's what kicked this whole thing off. He shot his grandmother in the face. He was ready to do damage and wreak havoc. And he thought he was going to kill her. But instead, he jumped into his truck or into her truck, drove it to the school, and got so nervous or whatever happened.
He didn't have a driver's license.
He didn't even have a driver's license. You're
Dad
right.
said he didn't know how to drive.
And he drove it into that ditch, which initially the funeral home behind the school picked up on the surveillance video. And he got out of the truck with all of his guns and his gear, and 2 people approached to see if he was okay, and he started shooting at them. And that's what you hear on the 911 call. Is there anything that stood out to you on that 911 call?
Nothing has stood out so far other than it's the worst call that you could ever want to take. My agency has taken calls for that before, and we were lucky that the situation didn't turn out so deadly. But I definitely empathize for the Uvalde Police Department before we get into anything else, just because I'm small agency. I've talked to people from big agencies about this who look down their nose and take very not brave stances to just wholesale condemn the Uvalde PD. And I say to that, well, you're the Cincinnati PD. That's a little bit different than small town Texas. And so we need to keep that in mind, that actually most of America functions this way with small police departments, small towns, and small schools.
There is enough blame to go around in this whole thing. And I want to be clear about this too. I think that in the year after, maybe even the 2 years after, the cops got maybe 90% of the blame for this. And I hear the arguments all the time. Well, you're the ones with the guns. You're supposed to secure everybody. You're supposed to save everybody, and on and on and on. There's plenty of blame to go around on this, as we will see. And it's not so much blame as it is like, let's take a look at what we could do differently so this doesn't happen again. Now, the first thing I want to point out is this guy who crashes into the ditch does not get into the school if the door is not unlocked. And every door, interior and exterior, is supposed to be locked by protocol of that school district. 100% of the doors should be locked.
Before anybody gets upset to thinking they're about to blame the teachers, we can just blame whoever's the manager of the infrastructure, first of all, for having a school where the doors only lock from the outside, which is preposterous. But the lock also is said to have been broken. But even if it wasn't, just being left unlocked is a physical security problem. And if it was the principal or another person there, that's a lapse of duty there. And it's not to dogpile on them, but we also need to recognize that this was an aggregate effect. A lot of things went wrong in order for him to even get into the classrooms. Drew.
Okay, so then the next step we take is that people want to believe that the cops did absolutely nothing while, they just kind of stood around while these kids were being slaughtered, which is an absolute myth. Immediate police inaction, as you see here. I'm going to play you Chief Arredondo's part of his interview. There are a couple things that I want to point out to at the conclusion of this.
Shot. I didn't quite catch the whole transmission. Obviously, you grab your keys and start running out the door to get to your unit. And then I heard Robb's school. I remember we have to carry 2 radios because we have school or campus radio, communicate with the campuses, and then we have police radio. Unfortunately, I don't have holsters for those. They got my way. I threw them, and obviously I'm running at this point.
Okay, so that's everybody's criticism initially is that this guy didn't even have his radios, but the guy's the police chief, and he grabbed both of his radios. He just doesn't have a place on his belt for him, which is, fixable, I guess, but you're supposed to have these 2 radios. But the thing that's overlooked more often than not is that dude's grabbing his keys and jumping in his car and headed to the danger. He's not, like everybody makes him out to be this inept, bumbling idiot that just stood around and did nothing and didn't know how to, didn't have his radios. As far as the radios are concerned, we'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, but there's no reception on the inside of a structure that's built for hurricanes or in this case, tornadoes. All the structures here in Florida, like all the schools, are basically the hurricane shelters. When there's a big hurricane bearing down on the state of Florida, and you live in a low-lying area, the place where you evacuate to, if you're not evacuating on a state, is a school because it's impenetrable. So that's just the way they're built, structurally sound. And no pun intended, the sound waves can't travel. Like you can't get repeater signal to penetrate a building that thick. So I'm sure you have limitations of space and buildings where you work, John.
It's extremely common. The school is not far away from where we transmit at the station. What's interesting is that there's actually usually a bubble. If you're too close to the tower or the mast, you can't attach to the tower with the radio. But we did drills in a school, active shooter drills in the school. And wouldn't you know it, it was the exact same thing. If you're looking at metal roofs, any kind of corrugated structure. The next time you go to Walmart, look up at the ceiling. They've got kind of that open ceiling where you can see the rafters and the lights hang down. You'll see corrugated metal up there. We've had problems getting radio and even cell phones through that sometimes, Drew.
So if there's no cell signal coming through and there's no VHF or UHF or digital radio signal coming through, that means there's probably limited Wi-Fi also. So using your cell is not always the best option in these situations. So there's a communication limitation right off the bat, first of all. But second of all, the whole point of me talking about the manning of Uvalde and the manning of the CISD is that you have to remember there was a 911 call where a woman was shot in the face. It probably doesn't happen very often there. So obviously that's going to take 2 to 3 officers off the street right off the bat. And remember, that call comes in before the car crash. When the car crash happens, that's going to take a few more officers off the street. So now if we're talking about a total of, 7, maybe 8 officers patrolling an entire city, and I'm just guesstimating, at least 2 are here and a supervisor. So there's 3, and maybe 2 are over here going to the crash. You're already spread thin. And the school district may not be involved in responding to that crash until somebody from the ISD or somebody from Uvalde PD gets on their radio and says, shots fired. There are shots fired here. So we'll continue on. Just listen when you're thinking in your mind that it was complete inaction. I want you to watch this opening.
They're saying that he's possibly in the building on the... Shots fired! Get inside! Go, go, go! Shots fired inside the building!
There was no question about it. It's gunfire. We need to get in there.
With first-hand accounts of the response.
And honestly, didn't think anybody was in there besides the gunman.
The missteps.
We couldn't find a way to work together.
So has there been a command post set up, and if so, where's it at? That's a negative, sir.
Chain of command is everything, and it was not there.
That's a big thing. So anybody or everyone knows, you can watch this entire documentary on PBS Frontline. It's about Uvalde. And it was done a year ago, well before the trial, but they did an amazing amount of uncovering documents and putting together body cams and putting together interviews. They did an incredible amount of research into this.
The trauma.
Child called 911 said the room is full of victims.
Understand this is a job we signed up for, but none of us have never been in this type of situation.
Okay, the whole point of me showing you this is I want you to listen to the date and keep the date of the shooting in mind, which was what, the 24th? Yeah, I think it was the 24th of May, 2022. So listen for the date when these interviews are starting to be conducted of all the officers that were inside.
All right, let me just get some basic information from you, brother.
May 25th, 2022, approximately 8:20 p.m. We're at the Uvalde Police Department in Uvalde, Texas.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Jason Philip Kusha, Texas Rangers.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother, this is a audio-video interview over the phone. I appreciate you answering my call.
Soon after one of the deadliest school shootings in the U.S., state and federal investigators sat down with police and other law enforcement officers to ask them about their actions.
That guy right there is one that just it struck me. He's from a sheriff's office around there. He's not from Uvalde PD or CISD, but just look at him. And his shoulders are slumped and he's just defeated. And the reason I wanted you to take note of that date is like any critical incident where I used to work at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, anytime that you were involved in a critical incident, you were off limits for 48 hours. You need to decompress before they could debrief you or interview you for, any kind of use of force, if it's a critical incident involving you being shot at, shooting, something to that effect, you're 48 hours out. Like, don't touch him. Don't talk to him. Don't do anything. You can ask very basic questions like the number of rounds they fired and if they think they hit anybody, and very, very basic questions. But, this lends to the potential, criminal investigation that's coming, but also because your brain has been through a very, very traumatic incident. And if you look at these guys, all of them to the man, they are just worn out. They are just like, this is not the, oh, these guys were a bunch of cowards look on their faces. This is like real life trauma. And I'm going to explain why they couldn't get to the inside in a second here. John, do you have anything to add before I go on?
You look at him and you see what you called defeat or a loss of morale. Everyone is so quick to criticize, but nobody at any point wants to put themselves in the shoes of these officers and deputies, rather before the fact or even after the fact, because we're so angry at what happened and we have no justifiable outlet for it, that being that the suspect is dead and will never meet any kind of justice that we have for him. We're so angry at them that we cannot have any compassion anywhere in our hearts for the fact that this man has seen something that no human being was meant to see, something that's going to haunt him for the rest of his life. And you could still see it on his face that he's seen a room full of his worst nightmare, a room full of dead children and dead teachers. And again, I just implore you that if you have any humanity, we can discuss these things. We can even be critical of police response. I think that's incumbent upon a republic, that we criticize the government that we pay to protect us and to govern us. But we also need to remember the human side of it, that this is a guy who may have a family of his own and certainly never got into law enforcement to walk into that room and see what he saw. And you don't know what he was feeling, and you don't know what his intentions were. And he was part of a machine. And we're going to talk about what the breakdown of leadership was and other barriers towards him affecting the rescue that he probably had in mind. Drew, go ahead.
Since that day.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Brown, the reason why we're here is we are investigating the incident that occurred on Tuesday, the shooting at the Robb Elementary.
Their statements were being gathered as part of the Texas Department of Public Safety's investigation into a chaotic response.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. The guy that you saw on camera as the spokesman that kind of took the show over, so to speak, the one that started kind of pointing fingers and such, is a guy named Steve McCraw. He was the head of the Texas Department of Public Safety. I don't know if he still is or not.
Yeah, the head of the Department of Public Safety. There's a difference between someone who's an administrative leader at that level and someone who is a street cop. Drew, go ahead.
And here's the deal. Texas Rangers have an impeccable reputation. I would never try to puncture that. I think though that a lot of Rangers responded to this, and they ultimately were going to take over the investigation at some point. But I think there was a point where he may have thought, well, maybe I need to minimize, what our role is in this thing. But they ultimately conducted the investigation. They conducted all of the interviews, and it went before the Texas Senate and all that. So just bear in mind, though, this is, 26 or 28 hours in some cases after the incident, and normally you don't touch people 48 hours, but for whatever reason they needed to know right away.
Well, I don't think they could have explained to the public that we know you all want answers, but everyone's got the next 2 days off. That just wouldn't have gone over.
It took 77 minutes before officers stormed a classroom and killed the gunman.
There's so much more nuance to this. So my source documents include the Texas House report. There was a report that the Senate put out.
That's the definitive report.
Right. There's also a Department of Justice, a COPS, community oriented. No, it's not community. It's a DOJ program where national level police chiefs and retired.
Yeah, the mayor asked the Department of Justice to come in and do a whole audit of the local response, right?
So there's that. Another document I use frequently in preparation for this, and anytime people want to discuss this, is there's an after action that was completed by an agency called ALERT, which is ALE, Advanced Law Enforcement Response, Rapid Response Training, and I'm pretty sure they are a Justice Department funded organization. If not, they're funded by the state of Texas or something to that effect. But they're the authority on active shooter training across the U.S., though they're Texas based. And they did an after action report where they, listed all of the things that they would have tried or kind of what they would have done. And they published theirs before the Texas Senate had published their report. And then there's one last one that people don't talk about very often. And it was insulation by the city of Uvalde, because they hired an outside investigator to come in and take a look at every officer that was there and every action of the dispatcher in anticipation of the civil suits that were coming. But he discovered a lot, and I tend to agree with most of his report. And he was stymied by the attorney general or by the district attorney of that area in getting a lot of that information to prepare that report, because they were keeping it close to the vest because they wanted to indict or charge those two that they ended up charging. Now, it's important to remember, like, there's 300 cops that responded to this thing, 300 plus, and there were two people that were charged, and one of them's already been acquitted. Mm-hmm. So,
Drew, do you think that's the reason why the DPS was quick to step back from it, because they knew that it was going to be that because it looked so bad, it was going to be bad for whatever agency was primary, and they didn't want to look like they didn't want to look like they came in there and took charge, and thus the onus and the consequences fell on them rather than the small town police department. They wanted to make sure that whoever the first officer was on scene, and we're going to discuss why that's important, but they wanted to make sure that they went down. They didn't want any DPS employees to go down. Go ahead.
Completely my opinion, but yes, I think that is part of it. And the first to the microphone or the first to the boss's office is always going to get the story out first, and from there you could do your damage control. So now I will say that the director was fair in his assessment during the hearing. At least the one time his microphone cut out was probably the most important sentence of the entire hearing. And that sentence was something to the effect of, if those local cops knew that there were kids in that classroom, there's no doubt in my mind they would have went in there. That's exactly what he said. His mic cut out. You could pick it up in the transcript. You can hear it faintly. That's what he said, but his mic cut out for that one thing. I'm not saying there's anything suspicious about it. I'm just saying I think that was like the worst time for anything to malfunction. I think America needed to hear that because they believed that these cops were just standing around doing nothing while kids were in there and there were gunshots going off. That's not what happened.
Can you kind of just lead me through the events of that day?
More than a year and a half later, the findings of the investigation have not been made public. State prosecutors have said they plan to present the findings to a grand jury.
Push record here. Okay, I see the numbers move. In reference to the incident that happened at Robb Elementary.
And we just need to get your side as what you saw and what happened, okay?
The Texas Tribune, ProPublica, and Frontline gained access to a trove of the investigative materials, including body cam footage, 911 calls,
Uvalde County 911,
and hundreds of recorded interviews.
And it's my understanding that you were working the day of the incident, is that correct?
These are the first-hand accounts of the officers who responded to the shooting at Robb Elementary.
Heavy heads, like you just see it in their brow. It's, I see it. Maybe others don't. Maybe others don't have any sympathy for these guys. I see it plain as day. Like this is a very, very heavy thing on them.
We'll go ahead and start this interview. Agent Valdez, on that, do you remember that day, the 24th?
I mean,
Do you remember?
It's a good opening question for anybody else, but I think it's kind of like a. Do you remember that? Like,
well, you have to have a first opening question, to be honest. I mean, I would have started with something a little bit more open-ended, like, take me through your day, you know?
Yeah.
Loemi Creel is an investigative reporter with ProPublica and the Texas Tribune. For over a year, she and a team of reporters have been analyzing the trove of evidence they obtained and writing about the breakdowns in the response.
This is the first time we have ever received this amount of information for a mass shooting. Frankly, it's typically rare to get this for any kind of criminal case, but particularly for mass shootings, where that is often withheld for years if it's ever released publicly.
Anything stand out in that statement to you, John?
Well, if we're still looking at potential charges against Arredondo, he's been indicted. There's no reason why anything should be released at this point. The only reason anything has is because of the public pressure.
Yeah. Also, the word unprecedented, and look, she's got a job to do. She's part of the Fourth Estate, and you know, she's just like, she's supposed to ask questions and get to the bottom of things. I do think that there is a certain level of like, I don't know quite how to put this. Like, if the people that are working on the piece don't understand like the full response, I guess, or the tactics or some of the things to it, it's going to look horrible. And
it's also in their interest to make it look horrible. It's in their interest to make it look salacious too. You also have to remember that policing in 2022 was not in a vacuum. Policing in 2022 was in the shadow of policing in 2020. And everything that was driving the news in 2022 was how responsibly are the police active in our communities. And this was, I mean, the scale of the incident itself defined this, but the news did not fail to miss that, of course. And of course, they were going to pile on. And as I said, it looked bad, and so it was bad. And so as things are being withheld because they are very embarrassing to police departments, and as things are being held because they're evidence in cases, of course, journalists are going to seize on that right away. And they're going to spin things as fast as they can to make it seem as though a cover-up or a narrative is in play. Drew?
Yeah. While we have a second, I just would like for everyone to like and subscribe to the channel if you like the content. If you have a question about anything, you know how to text John. And you can most definitely leave us a comment. I would love to interact with you. If you left a comment, check out our videos, do the whole 9 yards. Stick with us, though, because I want you to see the reaction of some of these officers at the end of this.
Uvalde Police Staff Sergeant Eduardo Canales was also among the first to respond.
So I stop, I get out, and I'm kind of like blindfolded. I don't see the accident. I don't see no accident. However, I hear a bunch of people yelling, "He went in the building." Still not thinking this is a active shooter. I'm thinking, okay, those are 1050. This guy has a gun, a Glock, maybe, I don't know. And he ran to school trying to get away from law enforcement.
All right, this is a good time to talk about bailout alarms, John. So what a bailout alarm is, you have to understand that Uvalde is very close to Eagle Pass. Eagle Pass wasn't in the news, you know, during the shooting. It later came, you know, it gained prominence for different reasons. But essentially what happens is when there's an armed person that rams through the border, or when there's some kind of chase involving customs or immigration or something to that effect, back then in 2022 anyway, they had these things called bailout alarms. And the bailout alarm was essentially that we're chasing somebody towards your school, and if they bail out, they may be armed, so we need you to go into a lockdown.
It's essentially sort of a United States intruder alert. I've been to Eagle Pass. It's literally on Rio Grande on the border. Years ago, when Maxine Waters was making hay out of Border Patrol, supposedly whipping people coming across the river, that was right there in Eagle Pass. So it's right on the border.
Right. So This came at the cost of sounding like wallpapers because they were dealing with 1 to 2 bailout alarms per week. And what they discovered later, after this incident, there's no difference between a bailout alarm and an active shooter alarm. So,
or a fire drill, when the alarm goes off and you're at a school, you know that it's time to stand up and quietly walk out of the school, and it's just a drill. You don't think that the school is actually on fire.
So it became part of the wallpaper. So when the big one hit, it's not as impactful as you would think it would be for the school staff. And this is understandable. This is completely understandable. It's just a flaw that was exposed. But this, I think this is very important what this sergeant is saying here. He was the first one on the scene, and he's trying to tell you, we were going to a car accident. And we just figured the guy, he bailed on his car. He might be drunk or whatever, and he happened to have a gun, and he was running into the school. There was no mindset that this was an active shooter at this point. At this point that he's telling the story. When they got there and they heard the shots, they went right in. You heard him, as a matter of fact, say, "Oh, we heard shots. There was no question about it. We had to go in." But they still hadn't put 2 and 2 together that was an active shooter. That's why I always say that the benefit of hindsight is 20/20, obviously. And everyone knows he was an active shooter because you found out after the fact, not because you were there. Because the people that were there initially were like a little confused by a few things, and it's understandable. It may not be understandable to you, but they're responding to a car crash as far as they're concerned. And the guy had a gun and he jumped out of the car. That happens a lot.
Grounds. It still hasn't hit me that this guy was actually there, an active shooter.
He arrived on the scene with Lieutenant Javier Martinez.
I had no idea what I was walking into. We actually thought we were going to an accident scene where what I thought was an accident and they're shooting at each other. Road rage. Yep. That was my first thought.
Arriving with Chief Arredondo was Uvalde Police Sergeant Daniel Coronado. His body camera shows the chief running towards the school.
All right, this is very important in my opinion. The chief running towards the school before the total S hit the fan. And he's questioned as a weak leader. He's positioned as somebody who didn't take command, but there's specific protocols that say he shouldn't be in command if he's part of the active response. And I don't think there's any greater evidence of him being part of the active response than this little snapshot from the video, because what's about to happen, I think you'll see what I mean.
Guys, be careful! He might be in that building!
We start running and kind of towards, I don't know where I was at the time.
Okay, Uvalde, they're saying that he's possibly in the building on the... Oh, shots fired! Get inside! Go, go, go!
Then I hear a lot of gunfire, and my heart sank because I thought, oh, like, I think he's either engaging officers or he's in the building.
Shots fired inside the building, Uvalde!
As they get close, they hear the tail end of more than 100 rounds being fired inside the school.
As soon as we heard it, we went in.
All right, another important point I always like to talk about. So they were there on the campus when these 100 shots were going off. They didn't know where they were coming from. That's typical. Like, you're supposed to move to the gunfire. But if the gunfire stops, you don't know where to move to. 1. 2, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about walking into a Walmart. Just stick with me for a second. And you walk over to the dishes and plates and platters and all kinds of stuff. And you just start ripping the boxes open and throwing the dishes willy-nilly in the aisle, up in the air and whatever, and listening to them crash down. Now, how long do you think it would take for you to walk from your car to the door of the Walmart to the dishware and just start throwing stuff around? How many dishes do you think you would be able to break before anybody, Walmart employee or fellow customer, would even look at you to stop you?
Okay, you can have a lot of damage done, right? It doesn't take long. It is a small air. He's in a small room. All the kids are there clustered together.
Nobody knows though. Just
yeah, and I'm just saying. I mean, he had a weapon that was even specially modified to allow him to increase the rate of fire. But for all they know, he's fired into the ceiling. He's fired into the wall. There's no way to know at this point what's happened inside that room, and I think that's the biggest metaphorical door that the police had trouble getting around, was not knowing what happened inside the room. Go ahead.
Wait till we talk about the physical door, because that gets people riled up, but it's true.
Like, there was no question about it. We heard it, and I told Hi Martinez, it's gunfire. We need to get in there.
Staff Sergeant Canales and other officers rush into the school on the northwest side of the building. A surveillance camera shows the officers moving down the hallway toward classrooms 111 and 112, where they think the gunfire came from.
Watch that door.
Within seconds, Chief Arredondo, Sergeant Coronado, and other officers enter the school at the opposite end of the hall.
Okay, this is another important point I want you to think about. They're at two different ends of the school, and the radios aren't working on the inside. But also, Sergeant Coronado just grabbed the door and opened it. Okay, the door's supposed to be locked. For what reason, John? To keep active shooters out. And it didn't do its job that day. Now, I guarantee any of you who are parents out there right now can go to your kid's school tomorrow, and you can find an open door somewhere, because it's just human nature. People either forget their keys or just going to run to their car for a second or whatever, just, sneak a cig or whatever, and they put a rock in the door. There's an issue in Robb Elementary and Uvalde School District as well that they, either they do it by key or by key card, but when there's a substitute, they don't have stuff to issue out to them. So some of the other teachers rigged like magnets to be able to defeat the locking mechanism or tied stuff down. And the CISD had the responsibility of going around checking those doors and writing up those violations, and they would find them all the time. So this is like, I'm not casting blame on the teachers because it's built in, like there are flaws built in and you're playing low odds here, but the active shooter can't get in the active shooter door if the active shooter door is locked.
I wouldn't necessarily blame that on teachers. I know that one teacher in particular went through hell because everybody was blaming her, particularly when all the emotions were very hot to begin with. But ultimately, it's not a teacher's responsibility to have that door locked. It should always be locked all the time. And the door could only be locked from the outside. So she saw him outside approaching the school with a weapon. She closes the door, but then what? Is she supposed to stand there and try to hold it closed? Go ahead.
She was cleared. Like it was, again, it's the first to the mic. So when people piled on her for no reason, they thought it was for good reason, that she was the one that left the door unlocked and all this other stuff. No, she was actually a hero. She got other people to evacuate. She warned other people. She made the phone call. She did everything she could. It wasn't her fault. So people tend to pile on, pretty quickly on a lot of these situations.
It's just smoke everywhere.
The officers recognize it's an AR-15 style rifle.
I was like, okay, well, this is it. I mean, we're probably going to get hit because there's like the way he was shooting is probably going to take all of us out. I looked over and I glanced and I could see the bullet holes all through the walls.
I remember the window, and I remember it was pitch black in there.
Okay.
Like I could not see inside that room. It was pitch black.
Okay, I want to point out, this is what they're dealing with. Now, everyone says, well, school's in session, dummy. Obviously, the kids are in there. No, the kids aren't always in there, first of all. It was one of the last days of school, and there was supposed to be an assembly that day anyway. But look at that. But look at those classrooms right there. That's pretty representative of room 111 and room 112. And this is a dark classroom. And by protocol, these teachers are taught in these situations to shut your door, make sure it's locked, and shut the lights out, and everyone be quiet. There's also hide, fight, run, or hide, run, fight. There are a couple of different things that different school districts teach, but this particular school district, their protocol was just hide. Everyone just hide. And they shut the door like this. So when you're looking at this door and there's bullets that have come out of where that orange bulletin board is, you're in what's known as a fatal funnel. You can't get in that door. Now, everyone makes a big deal of this. Well, the door was unlocked. Nobody knows that. It's supposed to be locked. It's supposed to be locked, and that door in the room is dark, so they assume it's empty other than the gunman being in there. And when they went up to try the door, that's when all the bullets came flying through the drywall, which is why all the smoke was out there. That was like drywall dust and the rounds themselves. And one or two of them actually got hit. That guy that was just talking is one of the ones that got hit with shrapnel, not with a bullet, with drywall or something. They thought they were shot. They were there. They were right at the door. But here are some characteristics of the door that I want you to take note of. First of all, it opens out, so you can't kick that door in. Second of all, you think, well, even if the door's locked, I could just smash that glass and reach my hand in and turn the handle. That's safety glass. It's not going to let you do that. It's that wire mesh glass. It's meant to be held together in the event that something impacts it, because they don't want any kids getting hurt, or they don't, it's safety rated impact. Those are fire rated doors, by the way. And again, they are meant to keep active shooters out. So what's the difference between an active shooter and a cop? And when the cops are coming in, they're moving to gunfire, but if there's no longer any gunfire, there's nowhere to move. Like you don't know, a general vicinity of where the guy is. You don't know exactly where he is. And if you can't get to him, you can't get to him.
Well, not only that, but approaching the door. I know that a lot of officers said that approaching the door would place themselves in great danger. Now, before anyone responds to that saying, well, they're placing themselves ahead of the children, you also can't breach a door if every single time someone walks up to it, that person is now another victim that's slumped over in front of the door.
Yeah.
It's not simply as easy as walking up to it when rounds can come through that door and through the wall simply by being stacked up in the hallway. This guy has a high-powered rifle with high-velocity rounds. He can take you out in the hallway. So while these guys are in the hallway, and the common person says, well, they're being cowardly in the hallway, they're in harm's way in the hallway outside. But the reason they can't rush the door is that he could take them all out before they could affect anything. Now, Drew, I do want to talk to you. You mentioned the door swinging out. You can't kick it in. Traditional tactics, you would use something like a Halligan to get into a locked door. Whether or not the doors were locked was also an issue. Flashbang grenades, entry from windows outside. Can you talk about any of these things?
Yep. The Halligan is the preferred tool. You'll hear the Bortec guy talk about that in a minute. The issue is not the Halligan. The issue was a tool that is strong enough to get the Halligan to wedge between the door frame and the door. The door frame is metal. It's not wood. So again, these are security doors. These are fire rated. A lot of people make the same claim of, which is reasonable, very reasonable. Like, why didn't you go around the building, go to the outside of those classrooms and start smashing the windows? When you do that, just remember that's dark in there and you're in light. You're in bright sunlight. Okay. So if I'm standing in bright sunlight and you are on the other side of it in a dark room and I decide to smash the windows, you have an easy tactical advantage to take me out. And just like you mentioned a second ago of them being in the fatal funnel, it's not about like being scared to die or not being willing to be the sacrificial lamb. It's got nothing to do with that. What it has a lot to do with, and certainly there's a high level of fear. You better be afraid if this is going on, but you have to act, courageously and fearlessly. And if you're backlit, if your entire body, he can see all of you, and none of you can see him, but maybe for the muzzle flash every once in a while, you're going to get taken out. And you're not in the business of creating more victims. You're in the business of saving people. And it's not even it can be taken as callousness, like, oh yeah, I'm not taking a bullet. I'll let these little kids take them.
There was a teacher who was hit multiple times who was rather critical of police officers, saying, I took rounds at this school and you weren't willing to take it even with your body armor on. But it's not necessarily an issue of taking rounds. We also had officers who were sustained non-serious wounds from gunfire. The situation is that I'm not even a tactics guy, just so that people don't dogpile on me in the comments. And if you want to, go ahead. I'm not on SWAT. Okay. I've done no SWAT operations. I've had very minimal training in those things. I've had some, but I would say it's one day. Okay. But I'll tell you that the situation that they're in right now, as I said before, with the high velocity rounds, the rifle, the thin walls, the thin doors, this is a nightmare of a tactical situation. And not just because of the potential hostages or victims inside. But as I said, they're all stacked up outside. They can't get a run at the door. They can't necessarily get in through the door fast enough. But the hope is also, if you're not hearing rounds pop off, what does that mean? Have you transitioned at some point into a more stable situation where you can talk to them? Sometimes there's an old saying in negotiations, and it's when it's time to talk, and when it's time to shoot. And what they encountered was a completely alien situation where it's time to shoot, but we can't, and things are kind of static. So do we resume talking to buy some kind of time? Ramos never answered any attempts at communication from Arredondo through the door. So that was not successful, but now it's like nothing's happening. So do we wait and see if we can get into a situation that increases our tactical leverage? Can we get a real SWAT team outside? Can we get actual negotiators in here who will talk to him? And so you're stuck between these two terrible places of, do we attempt the impossible or do we wait until it's slightly more possible? Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, let's also keep in mind there are however many on the scene right now at this point, we'll say 7, 8, and only 1 or 2 of them have any inkling that there are kids in the room. I don't think that they believe that there are kids in the room.
Well, even if they do, there's also this dark reality that we have to confront. Suppose that, and again, this is benefit of hindsight, and this is benefit of alternate circumstances. This is pure hypothesizing. But you could be standing in that hallway and suppose your worst nightmare has already come true. The eventuality that we face now, that now you have a classroom full of dead people and you have one active shooter. If he's completely contained and no one else is at risk, because it sounds crass, but it's like they're no longer in danger if they've passed away. If you're now in a containment situation and you still need to evacuate the rest of the school and effect an arrest of this person, you can't just go in there guns a-blazing because of what he's done. You still have the responsibility to go in there and arrest him.
Yeah, stop the shooting, stop the killing is basically the objective here. And if the shooting is stopped, the killing is stopped. I understand the element of, well, there are people in there dying and they need rescue, but they don't know that yet.
No.
That's the hindsight. That's something they've discovered in hindsight. It'll pick up in a second here. I just wanted to illustrate that door.
The gunman fires through the door of one of the classrooms, grazing Staff Sergeant Canales and Lieutenant Martinez.
Am I bleeding? Am I bleeding? Am I bleeding?
I started feeling like blood or something. And I was like, what? I was like, shot? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And Javier was like, hey, I feel like, so we both kind of retreat back a little bit towards where we were fairly injured. Mm-hmm. And we kind of turned around and we were just like, I didn't know if the shell was going to come out.
Surveillance footage shows Lieutenant Martinez going back down the hallway alone, then returning to where other officers are positioned.
The first few moments of a response is crucial, is what experts said. This is the best moment in time to engage the shooter and rescue any victims.
I agree with her. If you can get to him. If you can't get to him, how are you supposed to?
If the door had been open, I mean.
Yeah, and everyone gets back to this argument of like, oh, you should have just tried the door, dummy. I'll let you in on a little secret. At the end of this, I'm going to show you how I know that door, they don't know if that door was ever locked. People claim they think that door was unlocked and all this other stuff. That's pure hogwash, and I'll show you why.
So officers initially did that, and then they stumbled back when they're grazed by bullets. And that ends up really setting the stage for the rest of the response.
So again, setting the stage for the rest of the response. I mean, look, they can't get in there. They can't get in to neutralize the guy. And their mindset now is, we got him contained.
No one tried to go into the room for another 70 minutes.
I honestly didn't think anybody was in there besides the gunman, because I just honestly thought that they were in the cafeteria, because it seemed like all the lights were off, and it seemed like it was really quiet. I didn't hear any screaming, any yelling. I literally didn't hear anything at all. You know, you would think there was, kids would be yelling and screaming.
Officers after officers said that because it was so silent, they didn't hear any screams or any indication that a child was inside that wing, that they believed it was empty, even though it was the middle of a school day on one of the last days of the semester.
We couldn't hear the kids. We couldn't hear him shooting anybody or anything like that. So I guess that's why they were waiting to make entry, because we didn't know what was going on in there. It was too quiet.
I guess in your mind, did you think there was kids in that room?
I knew there was a possibility because of school, but I didn't know for sure that there was kids in the room. Again, it was really quiet, and I went to elementary school. You have your little your science class where you walk out, or PE, or different times of the day, and hopefully other activities. I know it was also the end of the year. So I was like, maybe they're doing something else, not in their classrooms. But that was kind of wishful thinking.
Man, that hallway was so quiet after the shots were done. You could literally hear yourself breathing. You didn't hear any kids. You didn't hear any teachers. Nothing. I do remember even asking Pete, "Hey, is this building clear? Is it just maybe one or two classrooms?" And he's like, I do not know, because like I said, you didn't hear anybody.
I don't hear any screaming. And usually I would think, I put myself in a position of being that age, I'd probably be like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's fight or flight.
No screaming, no yelling. And it's almost like, okay, maybe this place is empty.
Children and teachers are taught to be quiet during an active shooter threat. That is their best defense to stay alive.
It's not their best defense to stay alive, first of all. Second of all, some teachers and some students are taught to stay quiet. And she's making a gross assumption that all teachers and all students will stay quiet. That's not necessarily true.
She can make any assumption she wants. She wasn't there, but when you're standing there and you're responding, you've got to make a decision based off of a total absence of information.
Yeah.
And let's also, again, I go back to the humanity of the situation, because you're not only processing it rationally. Is it a field day? It's almost the end of the school year. You're trapped between hope and fear. What do you know, and how do you want it to be? And that can be very paralyzing for decision making. Drew, go ahead.
Yep. I see comments like, isn't it their job to clear the building? Yeah. They're clear. How are you going to know what's behind the door of that dark classroom? You have the shooter contained in there. You don't know if there are kids in there. You think that the class is empty. It's very simple and easy to type it out in the chat, but
in a sense, they're right. I mean, I tell people all the time for other situations that you have to resolve doubt in your favor.
Yeah, right. However, when the bullets are flying at you, and these two guys both had bullets whizzing,
I know
you're not in the you cannot rescue somebody if you're a victim.
If you're charging a rifle, yeah, you're not going to be able to do anything at all. And anything that you learn, suppose you see two people inside. Well, that's a critical piece of information that you may not be able to pass on if you're about to eat it.
Right. And with the doors being locked by protocol, they're doing what they can. They have this guy contained. He's not killing anybody else. That's their that's their goal right now.
I think
so. What the children?
I think what went wrong, and I know we need to press through, but they talk about how the most important thing was acting swiftly. So there's a small window of time through which you can act swiftly, and I think even though the police response, we proved that it was immediate, I think that because the shooter was able to just walk in and go in the classroom, you're talking about 30 seconds between when he's walking in through the exterior door and walking into classroom 111 or 112. So you're trying to thread a needle in order to get there at that time. And once that door is closed, the option for fast take them out now and ask questions later, that option became closed. And then after that, the question comes up every second passing you by. Do we resume with plan A, which is fast action now? Or evaluate, assess, gather strength, gather information, try to diffuse the situation? They missed their window, and I don't think it was their fault.
Yeah, there's no way to fix that. Like it's, once the door is locked, and it's kind of like, I see a lot of chatter about the fire, firefighters having a different look. If you can see a fire in that room, and you can't get beyond the door, and there's no window on the other side, how are you going to put that fire out?
I'm not going to take any commentary about firefighters, because a firefighter is the first thing they're going to do is stage if there's gunfire, but also firefighters typically are not putting themselves at risk in situations where they know that there's not a victim to save. If it's a closed room and they don't know if anyone's trapped in there, they're not going to do it. Case in point, there are still cases all the time of people who die in fires because we don't know that they're in the building. Drew?
Children and teachers told us, and investigators, is that they followed that training. So what we found was kind of this incredible contrast. The children and the teachers followed their training, but by following their training and staying quiet, that actually meant that officers thought they weren't there, and it took longer for them to help them.
So the first failure we can point out, part of the doctrine drift, is everybody followed their training. Everybody followed their training. The cops followed their training. The teachers and the kids followed their training. You can't rescue somebody behind a locked door. You can't just magically make the door open. It's not going to happen.
After the burst of gunfire from rooms 111 and 112, Sergeant Coronado tries to let other first responders know what is going on.
So I'm like trying to get on my radio, and there's no radio connection inside the building. So I'm like, and I know there's more guys coming. So I run back outside and like start getting on the radio. I start trying to give directions of where to get everyone posted up.
Stay right there, guys.
Be contained in this office.
Okay, guys. He's on inside this building. We have him contained.
An officer says the subject is contained. Coronado announces it over the radio.
We believe he's barricaded in one of the offices. Messed up, is still shooting.
Contained and barricaded. What those two words convey to the other officers who are arriving at the scene is that the gunman likely is inside a room alone without any victims. And so what that does is set up a response where they're treating it like a barricaded subject rather than an active threat where they should try get into that room immediately. Sergeant Coronado's announcement is the first on the radio that we could find that calls this barricaded, but many officers, in fact, nearly all of the ones that we went through, said not only that once they heard that announcement, they treated it as a barricaded suspect, but also when they arrived at the school, they continued treating it that way, despite mounting indicators that this was not the case.
Pointed to say, okay, stop, barricaded subject, not active shooter.
You're going to hear cop after cop after cop after cop talking about the barricaded subject. And there's a reason for that too. I can't, for some reason, I'm having a little trouble scrolling right now, but I might not even have the right document is the problem. So they are taught, as was uncovered by the investigation by the independent they taught the difference between an active shooter and a contained subject. Specifically taught. Well, so if you have a barricaded, and it's not a hostage, like you don't know if it's a hostage thing or not, but if you have a barricaded subject, it is different and a different response than an active shooter. And you made mention of it earlier. Active shooter on the inside of a school shooting, you don't know what they've shot, you don't have any victims in front of you, is not an automatic death sentence. You generally go to the shooting, you go towards the gunfire, you run towards the gunfire as they did, and you confront the gunman, especially if he's confronting you with his gun. That's a deadly force situation. As we saw in the Tops situation in Buffalo, that guy walked into the Tops supermarket. He took out a bunch of people with his gun. Then he walked outside, dropped his gun, took his vest off, and stood there with his hands up as the Buffalo police arrived. You can't execute the guy. It doesn't work that way. So even if the gun has shut, you still have rules of engagement. You can't, if you don't know he's committed murder, or you don't know that it's likely that he's going to commit or cause death or great bodily harm to himself or to you or to other people, you can't just willy-nilly shoot him. And if he's in a room that you think is empty and you have him contained in there and you can't get into him, the only option is barricaded subject. It's time to talk him out of there. Go ahead, John, if you had something.
Oh, you go ahead.
Okay.
That's big, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, to be honest with you, like I said, I mean, I don't know where that came out of. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're just reacting to what you're dealing with at that moment in time. There's no distinct determination. Like, okay, well, now it's a barricaded subject. I mean, when you have someone locked in a room and there's no rounds going off, and you don't know. I mean, like I said, I mean, you don't see any bodies. Yeah. You don't see any blood. You don't see anybody yelling, screaming for help. Those are motivators for you to say, hey, get going, move. But if you don't have that, then slow down.
Mm-hmm. So in your mind, it was a barricaded subject?
Yes, barricaded subject.
John, I'm asking you, in your mind, right?
In my mind, yes, because we didn't hear any more shots. As soon as we got, it was just complete silence.
This guy's probably just a guy that wrecked out his vehicle. Didn't want to get caught by police because he's a smuggler with a gun. And has now barricaded himself inside of a classroom and is shooting rounds to get us off his back. Okay, I don't know. There's no kids yet.
And at the point that the shot stopped, I think it was more like he would treat like a barricaded person because you don't know what he has. Are they hostages? Are they? You know, the last thing we thought was that he had actually shot the kids.
All right, so I could show you this. This is the document I was talking about a second ago, but they were trained, isolate, distract, neutralize. Then it also goes into learning or lesson objective 2.3. This is an analysis of everything that they were trained on. So analysis, lesson objective 2.3, it's 3 priorities: stop the killing, stop the dying, and then once the threat has been isolated, distracted, or neutralized, medical aid should be provided to those injured. But if you don't know there's anybody injured, you can't provide medical aid. The third priority is to evacuate the injured. And I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of people that were evacuated from that school, the amount of kids that were actually saved. It's never going to, the overshadow will always be the 19 and 2 that were unfortunately taken from us. But the part of lesson objective 3.3, the student has to demonstrate proper threshold evaluation, and it's a technique used to search a majority of a room prior to entering it. And the technique can aid in the officer, the intelligence lacking, any information of what's going on in there. But you have to determine what's in the room before you can enter it. It's even if there's shooting going on, even if there's active shooting, you don't know if the guy is stuck in a corner waiting, laying in wait for you. That is 1,000% trained. I've trained it myself. I've taught it. I was an active shooter instructor. You've got to make sure, and then there are certain tactical means of making entry. So all of these things were discussed and trained for the officers that responded there. They also talk about the irony of the Department of Justice, their report, because they lambasted the officers for making the decision to turn it into a hostage situation, or rather a barricaded subject. But that's exactly what they did at Pulse. That is exactly what they did at Pulse. And by the way, the sheriff who was in charge of SWAT at Pulse was on that board making that judgment. So I think there's a lot of, I think this is a little bit more nuanced than people just saying, well, they should have just went in and saved the kids. Well, no shit. And this is kind of the point of this, episode. Like, do you think that that's maybe not the goal? Do you think that maybe that, like, they had some kind of, they just wanted to stand around and listen for kids? Look,
looking back, they all want to make that decision. Okay, looking back, there's no one who says this went exactly according to plan. This went right. There's nothing else that we could have done. There's nobody who's making that case. The thing is that we have to look past the hindsight and put ourselves in the boots of the person who's standing outside the door and in the hallway. What do you know? What don't you know? And ultimately, what risk are you willing to take? And of course, that's a question of tactics. It's a question of intelligence. And it's a question of leadership and of training. I may have mentioned this earlier, but I think part of the deal is that they hosted training in March, which taught them to contain subjects and barricaded subjects. And if they think no one else is in danger, they're supposed to contain that. But even if there is someone inside, what scenario is playing out in his head? I walk up, I rattle this doorknob, I start beating on the door, or start coming at it with a Halligan. All of a sudden, I hear the rising cries of 20 kids, each of them silenced one shot at a time.
Different story.
And that's a situation where you are in the hallway, you're the one wearing the boots, and you're the one that has to walk up and rattle that door, knowing that if you jiggle the handle, that could be the next thing you hear. That's a hell of a thing. And all I'm asking is that someone consider themselves in that spot. Of course, it's the wrong thing to not go in there and do everything that you can do in the moment. Who can debate that? But you need to understand the decision-making in the moment that it's happening. And we need to judge officers based off of what's reasonable and the totality of their circumstances at the time that it's happening. That's for everything that we do, Drew.
I still maintain, too, jiggling the handle is a hindsight maneuver. Everyone can easily say, well, you just try the handle, dummy. Everyone should just try the handle. That's not true. You are going into this knowing that every door is locked. You're going into this knowing that every door is locked. And you have to overcome that barrier. So now you want them to overcome the maybe barrier, because going up and jiggling the handle means a good chance that you're going to die. And and you can't get in and rescue anybody once you jiggle the handle, just like you're saying. Just that's a great point. Like you go in and he takes you out. Now he systematically starts taking everybody else out. And
well, I mean, that's a fear that I didn't even address is, certainly your own life, which is going to be in the mind of any human being who's in that situation. But for me, the thing that scares me when I try to put myself in Arredondo's shoes is that somebody may still be alive. This may still be a salvageable situation. And how will it be? How will I live with myself? And how will I be treated later? And how will the children themselves are the primary concern. How will it go for those kids if I alert this guy that I'm here now and he decides that it's over and he's going to play out the rest of his terrible game in what he believes are the last 10 seconds of his life?
I think
how much of the situation do you stall it? How much do you try to save? It's impossible to know. He's in an impossible situation. And that's the truth that we need to at least acknowledge, that he was in an impossible situation. We can criticize it because we're going to, but acknowledge that. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just, think that a lot of this stuff is a no-brainer, but it's not. Like it is when you're very comfortable in your home and you're sitting in front of your fireplace with your TV on. Yeah, it's definitely a no-brainer, but not when you're in it. There's no two ways about that. Which format?
The documentary back on the screen.
Yep.
Shut up in the air, broken the line, so we had no idea.
Right.
What was behind those doors?
Uvalde County 911. We have an active shooter at Robb Elementary of an active shooter.
At 7 minutes into the standoff, a teacher down the hall from the gunman calls 911.
I don't have a visual, but I could hear gunshots outside of my classroom. You could still hear gunshots inside the building and the building. I don't know. There's been a whole lot. And I've got a message from somebody that somebody is shot in another classroom. Somebody is shot in the classroom? Okay, can you tell me if it's a teacher or not student? Mine, and another one. I'm sorry, what? Another classroom. I don't know. Please hurry. Okay, ma'am, what room number? What room number? Can you tell me what room? I'm in room 102. Okay, so it's going to be a classroom? I don't know where that went now. I gotta go. I can't let them hear me. Okay, it's okay. It's okay, I understand. Okay, hurry. Okay, ma'am. Hurry.
At the same time, Chief Arredondo calls into dispatch. Officers at the other end of the hall hold their positions.
Not having a radio, I know at some point I call 911, so that there's a recording there.
Hey, this is Arredondo. Can you hear me? This is an emergency right now. I'm inside the building with this man. He has an AR-15.
He hears about the teacher's call and that the gunman likely shot a person in one of the classrooms.
Is the teacher with him in the classroom?
She's in another classroom. She's in room 102. Room 102. There's another person possibly shot across from her. They're not sure.
Okay. So we have him in the room. He's at AR-15. He's shot a lot. He's in a room. He hasn't come out yet. We're surrounded, but I don't have a radio with me. Please let all the units know he's going to be in room.
Okay, so the shooter's in one of the rooms. What room number, please?
Yes, he's going to be in room 9, 10, 11, 12. He's either in room 111 or 112.
All right, this is all important because they're saying they got a 911 call from somebody in 102 who's been hit, but the gunman is in 112. So they still haven't connected the dots yet that there are kids or teachers that are injured in 111, 112. 111, 112, by the way, connected. They didn't know that. I don't think everybody there knew that. I'm sure some of the CISD guys knew that. So he's now, the other thing too is like he can't put that out over the radio because one, he doesn't have a radio, but two, there's no reception. So even if he tried to put that out over the radio, you saw the other guy have to step outside just to make a radio transmission and try to set things up. So they're getting, first of all, those dispatchers are overwhelmed because there's only 2 of them working there and there's only 2 of them working in Uvalde. So Uvalde CISD has 1 or 2 dispatchers, and then Uvalde PD has 2 or 3. And they're completely overwhelmed. Lest we forget, this all started with a shooting. There was already a shooting at the grandmother's house, and a stolen car, and an accident, and out of nowhere. And then we are, 30 minutes into it or 50 minutes into it, and the chief is having to call 911 on a phone, on a landline, to say, hey, this is Arredondo. I need to, get some information out to the other people. The problem is nobody can hear what they're saying, and there's just so much confusion. There is supposed to be a critical incident command structure. There's supposed to be a incident command system in place.
National Incident Management System. It was created after wildfires in California, in which you had lots of agencies and lots of people responding. But the criticism to that response was that you had too many people who were in charge of too many other people. And something that police officers are taught, firefighters are taught, dispatchers are taught, correctional officers are taught. The first person on scene is in command, regardless of rank. And it doesn't matter if the chief or the super chief shows up after that they're still in command until they turn that over.
Yeah, there's an important distinction here, because everyone was going to say, well, the chief of police was in there. It is the first person not engaged in the battle that is going to assume command. And if he can't get word out to the outside, I need someone to set up a command post, what are you going to do? He is not supposed to assume command. And in fact, had said as much in his interview. He was like, I didn't even know I was in command, which everyone thinks is an incompetent statement. It's not. It's very competent. He was the leader. He went in there. He was trying to get everything established. He was working things from the inside.
A command post is going to be outside. It's going to be outside the area of what you would call the red zone, where there could be bullets flying around. You don't have an incident commander who is in range of a firearm.
You can't be engaged in the fight and give orders like
that. You
also
also can't be in command if you're in that situation, because suppose you're taken hostage.
Yeah.
A call goes out for more units to respond.
401 stated he's got the shooter in room 111 or 112. He's going to be armed with a rifle. Repeat, armed with a rifle. He's requesting for SWAT by the funeral home south of the building.
But from the footage and audio we've reviewed, no one is told that someone has been shot.
Chief Arredondo, he doesn't, according to what we have obtained in body camera footage and call logs, seem to convey that information to anyone else.
But the point is, it's not on him. Like, I get what she's saying, but the other part is he's dealing with the shooter. He knows where the shooter is. He's trying to deal with the shooter. And what you're resting on him is the rescue.
Okay, but let's pivot to what should have happened. If we're going to break down what went wrong and what went right, there should have been someone else arriving on scene, establishing a perimeter, establishing a CP who says, I'm in command. And if someone wants to come up and say, I'm taking command of this, or whatever reason, they can work that out. But what you don't have is Lieutenant, another patrolman, someone from another agency saying, I'm in command, I'm in a CP, I've got my vehicle out here, turn your green lights on, and you're establishing a perimeter, and that you're the one who's doing communications between dispatch and the scene. Okay, so Arredondo, he's almost being blamed because he could never disprove the negative of being in charge. Where's the person who is taking charge? Right. Firefighters will tell you. Chase is in the chats here. He's been giving me grief all night. One thing I'll commend firefighters in my local areas is that they're very good at NIMS. They love saying I'm in command. That's something that firefighters love to do very much. But I'm curious why, when NIMS was created to handle the chaos of a situation like this, and that was way back in the early 2000s that it was established. It was in W's term that they came up with that. Why aren't other police officers abiding by NIMS? Why aren't they taking command? Is it fear? Is it confusion? Drew, what do you think that it is?
Well, listen, everyone can blame training as the issue. Like, cops don't get enough training, or firefighters get ample training, or whatever. And I could see why they perfect that craft, because, like, it's ultra, when a firefighter has to jump into action, it's like ultra important that the communication is perfect and right every time, because there's so much is at stake. Like, it's not just them, it's the citizens, it's the structure itself, it's all these other things. But let's take a look at the downtime between the two professions. Okay, and I'm not taking cheap shots at firefighters, but if you have downtime to train, or if you have downtime to read or talk about or do PowerPoints on NIMS, that's great. You could be really good at it. If you're going from call to call to call to call out on the street, not assigned to a station, like you're assigned to your car, and every time your computer goes off, you respond somewhere, you don't have the downtime with all your bros to sit around and talk about NIMS. And
that's broadly true, but unfortunately, Uvalde did host active shooter training at the school in March. I mean, this should have been fresh for everybody and wasn't.
Well, what should have been fresh, though, is the question, because I'm also telling you, too, like, a lot of active shooter training
doesn't involve NIMS at all.
No, not necessarily that, but it involves, well, it doesn't involve communications, which is a big flaw in our.
Always true.
Yeah, but what it does expose is you're trying to get people to learn basic movements. It's like, look, you know, just imagine these guys are Rockettes. Do you think that they're gonna like go out there and do, you know, professional dance moves after one day?
Training is really going to teach them philosophy more than anything really strictly. Yeah.
And it's going to, like, you can teach the fundamentals of forming up and making sure there's a back guard and the two flanks are going to be looking at the doors on either side. And you're going to all move to the gunfire and you're going to move in unison. But it's so minimal, like the training itself, that the scenarios are based on open doors. The scenarios are based on loud gunshots, you know, so it's the assumption that you're going to know exactly where to go and you're going to have to keep going there. Now, the training is real. Like, you take not real rounds. You take pain-inducing rounds that are little like soap pellets or something.
Ammunition, right?
Yeah, it's a little more than ammunition, but it hurts. Yeah, I mean, like, I was the guy that they shot. I was, you know, put as one of my roles as the trainer was to be the assailant. So it hurts, even with equipment on, it hurts, but it's also gearing you to fight through it. Like, yeah, you're going to feel a little bit pain. Just keep moving towards that threat. So this isn't like a lack of training them to move to the threat. This is a matter of, you can't move to the threat if you're always trained about an open door. And now you've come to a fire rated door that opens out, that has safety glass, and you don't have anything to pound the Halligan into the metal door frame. That's a big training issue, and I'm sure it's been addressed since.
A few moments before the 911 call from the teacher, on the other end of the hall from Chief Arredondo, one of the officers says that the gunman is inside his wife's classroom. The officers try to confirm that classes are in session.
See if the class is in there right now or if they're somewhere else. Again, this is classroom.
The classroom should be in session right now. The class should be in session, Miss Mirella.
That's going to be Ruben's girl.
19, your status.
Okay, everyone on the outside heard that loud and clear. They're like, oh shit, classes should be in session.
And it's also the wife of one of the officers there.
But who, and we're going to see him in a second, but who on the inside knows that? And there is a guy at this hallway, by the way, who tries a door. It's unlocked like it shouldn't be. He walks in there and he gets spooked because some little kid pops out. And he's like, oh shit, what are you doing in here? And he evacuates the entire classroom. So now he gets back out and he starts saying, hey, there might be kids in these rooms. So let's, you know, we got to treat it like this. The word's not getting back to the guy making the decisions on the inside. He's not the commander, but he is making decisions on the inside. He's sending people to find keys to open the door. And again,
this is fog of war stuff. This is, you know, someone gets a piece of information and then they just come to understand it. And then they don't realize that they're at a link in a communication chain that they need to be passing this on. Someone will tell you something and it's just like, all right, I comprehend. This changes the game. Okay.
Right.
Again, get the word on to everyone else. But adrenaline, hypervigilance, fixation on what you're watching, it messes with the thought process. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jill's highlighting. She's on fire right now. Like, she's highlighting stuff that should be addressed like daily across America. Like, teachers and students should be training with cops, but you're going to traumatize the. I'm telling you, if you've ever been through an active shooter training, it's the real deal. And
these guys were using role playing, which I've done that before. I don't know why, Drew. They asked me to play the part of a hostage. But yeah, that training can be very intense, particularly if you are using simulated rounds. You're going to do that near a child?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, it's going to freak kids out. Like, so you can't have gun. You know what I mean? You can't have the guns around them. And then she also asked a question like, why are law enforcement and staff? Why are the law enforcement people from these agencies not on the same page? It was only 2 months ago that they were in the training, which is true, but you have to remember, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the people that went to the training are at the scene, first of all. Second of all, there are 300 and some odd officers in total at the end of this. And so the CISD only has 6 officers. Uvalde only has 24 officers. So you're talking about like 10 or 12 different agencies, all on 10 or 12 different frequencies, all on 10 or 12 different roles. Like, some are like, okay, well, you're going to be crowd control. Okay, well, you're we've already got 4 people on the inside. So that's the importance of setting up this command post on the outside, to make sure that all the heads of these agencies are able, it's like the Hydra. You want to have one centralized command, and all of you with your radios transmit the same information at the same time to everybody on the scene.
And thirdly, you can have training, and that can teach you broad philosophies like what you're talking about: delegation of duties, making someone a communications officer, making someone a liaison, making someone in charge of perimeter control, someone in charge of doing all these things. So you could do training 2 months ago, and you could be taught broad philosophy, but all of a sudden you're in a situation that's not identical to the scenario that you just played out. And how could it be? Because you cannot plan for every identical scenario. And so now you've had training that's 2 months ago, and you've learned principles that can apply here, and perhaps you're applying some of them. But the training isn't going to make this feel like it's anything other than your first day at the rodeo. This is still going to feel fresh and new and totally unknown. You're not going to feel completely comfortable in this situation because they don't do training for the situation every single day. That's not the workaday life of a Uvalde police officer. They had that training 2 months ago, and now the scenario they did is not this exact situation. And so it's not exactly kicking in like muscle memory. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, it takes repetition to get the muscle memory.
No.
Uvalde PD is just advised.
Any kids in there?
Classes in session.
He's in a class.
Yeah, with kids.
15 minutes later, the officer, Ruben Ruiz, gets a call from his wife, Eva Morales.
Hey. Ruben. She said she shot Johnny.
Okay, this was a big to-do. This is a bunch of cops coming to the rescue of another cop, and you could see he's got the 10,000-mile stare, and he's holding his gun in his right hand. And he's the one that was on his phone that all of America dogpiled on. But as it turns out, he was texting his wife, Eva Morales, who was one of the ones that was killed. And she was saying, "I'm shot," and he's responding to her. So what the criticism is that they stopped him from going in there. And I think you have to look at it from a commander's perspective. Is this the guy you want going into a classroom that he can't get into?
Well, the news will portray it as he's the guy who should be, because he's the most highly motivated. That in a deficit of motivated officers, this hallway full of people who don't really want to do anything, This is the guy with personal stakes that's going to go in there and kick the door open and be a hero. Like, this is Die Hard, right? That was literally the situation in Die Hard, is that he had the personal stakes involved to save his wife.
Yeah,
but this is going to make him not responsive to other people. It's going to make him not responsive to commands, and it's going to make him take foolhardy risks. Go ahead.
So when he starts firing bullets and hitting kids, at what point are you going to be critical of that? You know what I mean, America?
Or taking out the suspect who's surrendered.
Yeah, and that's another distinct possibility. So I can see where people are like alarmed by, like, why would you prevent this guy from going in? If anybody, he's the most motivated. But yes, he is the most motivated, but he's the least present at the moment. He's on auto.
My point is that the news loves to make this guy into a would-be hero, though.
Right.
He wanted to get in there, and we're trying to hold him back. You know, he's like, hey, Eva's in there. She's shot. Like, we need to get in there, these kids. And we know we need to get in there, but we don't have the right equipment.
We're waiting. We got a negotiator, and we're waiting for more shields.
You know, I didn't even bother to throw on my rifle plates at all. Like I said, we didn't have any shields, no flashbangs, no nothing that we could use to create a distraction to not only, like, not sound selfish, but make sure we go home at the end of the day, but at least more of these kids can go home at the end of the day. You know, understand this is a job we signed up for. Yeah, we put our life on the line, but none of us have never been in this type of situation. None of us ever thought any of this situation would ever happen here in Uvalde. You know.
So he's raw and honest in that moment, saying, look, it's going to sound self-serving, or it's going to sound selfish. We're trying to make sure that we go home at the end of the day, but that's not really, it's so that we can sustain life long enough to get in to save the kids. Like, that's a big factor. And, you know, it's probably hard to say, because he knows that people aren't going to reckon with that. But I get it. I understand what he's saying. Like, I'm not afraid of dying in a situation like that. I'm afraid of becoming an anchor for the rest of the guys to have to come in and try to rescue me, somebody else being killed. And now we're all in this massive chasing our tail, as opposed to getting in there and saving the kids.
Like I said, they were constantly paralyzed by the prospect of a situation that was worse.
Yes.
Do you stay where it's static, stable, and not even completely known? Or do you roll the dice and definitely roll snake eyes and everything goes to hell? Go ahead.
Right.
In their interviews, officers explained that one of the reasons they didn't try to go into the class was the lethal nature of the AR-15's ammunition, which can puncture body armor.
He could just wait for me and just pop people at the door as they're coming in. He's gonna take us out like butter. No equipment. No equipment to hold that type of round up.
The gunman had dropped a backpack full of ammunition outside the school.
I think that was kind of holding most of us back because of what we were hearing. We found out that the backpack had 30 plus magazines full of 223 rounds in there, so that kind of realized we weren't equipped to make entry into that room without several casualties. Going back now, that kind of haunts me, that if it was a pistol or something, it would have been maybe a different thought process.
At that point, we had no choice but just to wait and try to get something that had better coverage where we could actually stand up to him. At that point, we just secured the scene and just kept him contained into what we thought at that point was that one classroom.
I'm not sure where Jill heard people talking loud as hell in the hallway, but that's not what I see or my experience.
We still try to do the best that we could. We were there. We were trying to make sure that he didn't go to any other rooms. I'm kind of like numb to the situation. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was scared, bro. I'm sure. Like, I mean.
Had anybody gone through that door?
Yes, sir.
He would have killed whoever it was.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we can only carry so many ballistic vests on you. That 223 round would have gone right through you, through the door. I mean, he was ready.
Yes, sir.
He was ready for us.
We do have.
So jiggling the door handle means that you're at the door. Talking in the hallway means you're in the hallway.
Some questions, and we kind of want to clarify some things that happened yesterday.
Sure.
This is the guy they want to scapegoat.
So let's just start with how your day started yesterday.
Uvalde School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo was interviewed the day after the shooting. He would later be heavily criticized for his handling of the response.
All right, so we have a friend in the chat that was in a similar position in life. I just want to point this out. This was the 25th of May. This occurred on the 24th of May. So we're talking 26 hours after he saw the last dead kid. And where is he? He's being questioned by Texas Department of Public Safety, full uniform. I mean, talk about triggering, one. And two, listen carefully to what he says during this interview.
Everything, because this is probably one of the first times I'm telling the entire story. I'm trying to think as I'm going. It wasn't noon yet, I know that, but it's probably not far from noon.
At 11.
So he's saying, like, this is the first time I've actually had a chance to so he's literally being interviewed that is later going to lead to an indictment. And he was in a critical incident within 26 hours. And this is the first chance he's had to kind of run through things. It's not as easy as everyone thinks. I mean, you know, everybody would have saved those kids. Trust me.
Yeah, everyone but him.
For Master Peter through this room, we're going to get rid of the kids first before we do any breaching. Okay? Oh, yeah, for sure. So the guys, calm down for me. Hey.
But he tells officers to first finish evacuating the wing. In his interview with investigators, he explained his focus on vacating the classrooms.
My first thought is that we need to vacate. We haven't contained, and I know this is horrible. I know this is what our training tells us to do, but we haven't contained. There's probably gonna be some deceased in there, but we don't need any more from out here.
So you've got 20 whatever victims, but there are 250 or 300 in the school, have 400.
They said they successfully evacuated 500 people from the school.
Okay.
Chief Arredondo didn't have his radio with him. And there's no evidence from the information we have, the call logs or the body camera footage, that he was communicating in any way with the BORTAC commander who was on the other end of the hallway. So
I need to point out, it doesn't matter if he had his radio with him or not. She's making it into a deal. But it wouldn't have mattered if he had his radio or not, because they're not on the same channel until BORTAC was patched in. And when BORTAC was patched in, and it's in that same document I showed you earlier, one of the chief complaints of the dispatcher said the overwhelm came when we patched in with BORTAC, because now there's 150 people talking on this radio. Whereas we were trying to get information out and we couldn't. We couldn't even tell them what we were hearing on the 911 calls. It was impossible.
with Chief Arredondo on one side and the BORTAC commander on the other side not communicating with each other, that kind of cohesive response was not happening.
Outside the school, as more officers arrived throughout the standoff, it was chaotic too.
So he's still in there? Could y'all assist us in finding out who some of these vehicles are?
Police vehicles were parked in the middle of the street, blocking ambulances.
I'm moving this one back there. Just make sure nobody's behind me. He took the keys.
Parents and community members tried to get closer to the school.
Behind the yellow line back there. Let's get everybody back. Get everybody back.
So that's a big deal too, that the media made, that they were arresting parents. They weren't arresting parents. They arrested one. And she hopped the fence against their orders. And I still defy anybody to show up at a fire scene and tell the fireman to go fuck himself and run into that building and see what happens. So it's,
it's a huge problem for communications too, because now, this information went out over Facebook saying that there's an active shooter in the area. Everyone's safe and secure inside the building, but everyone wants to know, when can I get my kid
Yeah.
And so they're showing up, they're not getting through, they're calling, and now they're outside. And now you have units that have to stand outside and maintain a perimeter. Go ahead.
So you got John. So John, like John playing the role of the dispatcher here, is dealing with an influx of 911 calls, not only from the kids on the inside who happen to have phones, or teachers or custodial staff or media specialists.
Or Arredondo.
Or Arredondo, the chief who's trying to get through. They are dealing with kids or loved ones texting to people on the outside who are now calling 911 on behalf of the people on the inside. So there's overwhelm there. Then there's a bunch of cops who are not working that day or whatever that want to know what's going on because they want to get involved and they want to help. It's a natural instinct. So they're calling John. And when there's only John and his partner working in the comm center at the time, you're trying to handle all of the 911 calls and all the media inquiries and all of the command staff inquiries.
And everything else that's going on as a normal 911 day.
And as it played out in the independent investigation that the city of Uvalde did, they were responsible for the medical teams. They were responsible for the dispatch of the medical team. So we haven't even scratched the surface. We haven't even begun to talk about it. Like, you got 350 cops. Well, you got 21 wounded. So, wounded or dead or something to that effect. You've got to marshal all of those emergency vehicles. Cops have just pretty much parked wherever they wanted to park so they can get in there and get in the fight.
Yeah, because they were trying to get in there as fast as possible. They didn't even stop to think about where they ought to park so that other responders coming in behind them. And it's a common criticism of police. Fire and ambulance are going to talk about how the cops are always in the way. But also, if they had parked far away and had jogged, they would have been criticized for that as well.
Let's go, get back.
Around an hour into the standoff, officers were still trying to figure out how to get into classrooms 111 and 112, which they would later learn are connected. They remained focused on finding a key.
There's master keys here, but they're not opening none of these other doors. So since the master key was not opening the doors.
Yeah.
We don't know if it works or not. If you're shooting at the door every time somebody gets close to it.
So they potted down his mic. They potted down the audio for that, but he's talking about needing the key. We got to have the key, and they supposedly have a master key because he is shooting at everybody every time anybody approaches the door. They try to, like, you can read it for yourself in the documents. They tried a Stanley flat max. They tried a sledgehammer. They tried all these things on these other doors to see what would work to open it, and nothing opened this thing. They had to wait on the key, and they couldn't find the key because the master key kept changing. They kept changing the master key every year and all this other stuff, and none of the school administrators ever trust the cops with the keys and all this other stuff. So, it was definitely a CF going on in there, but this is what an active shooter is. This is the point. This is a terrorist attack, and there's nothing regimented about response to a terrorist attack. You can only do what you're trained to do,
and you can only do the best you can, moment to moment to moment.
So we moved down. We were still trying to figure out how to breach. They were trying to find a master key because we had a Halligan tool, but we didn't have any way to get the tool into the door jamb.
Hey, Park, you got gas? There's a bunch of gas right here, partner.
Everybody was just trying to figure out how to get in.
My pickup trucks, I parked right back over there. Bring it over here in the toolbox. I got a sledgehammer.
Toolbox, you got a sledgehammer?
Yes.
Okay, that's the guy that got criticized for putting hand sanitizer on his hand, the guy with the hat and the plaid shirt. He was a medic. He was getting ready to go in and do rescue. He wanted to make sure that his hands were clean, and he put hand sanitizer on his hands, and the world went crazy on him. This detective just handed him a set of keys and said, go get a sledgehammer out of my truck. He had his own truck there. He had his own,
there was deputies that were responding. They were wearing plain clothes. Drew, I don't know. This is just thought experiment, but something I could see my guys doing, because we typically carry a lot of tow ropes around because we deal with the snow.
Yeah.
Throw a tow rope around that handle and then attach it to the frame of a truck. I mean, you're gonna tear up a lot of the building going around a corner, but
oh, that doesn't matter. Like any way to get in is what matters. Like, but the other thing is like, yeah, you can drive a Bearcat through the exterior and just, you know, like demolish the windows and wall, but you don't know what's on the other side of it, especially if now you're starting to learn, oh shit, there are kids in there. So now, are they alive kids or are they, you know, like not with us kids? Like it becomes an issue. And but you're like your toe strapped, like you got to think outside the box. Like there's you got to do something, right?
Eventually I couldn't tell you time, maybe 15, 20 minutes maybe. Somebody finally found the master key. We tried it on the janitor doors there was a janitor door where we were on either side of the hallway. We tried it on those, it worked. We were stacked on the hallway leading to the room. Just getting ready to make entry.
At 12:50, 77 minutes after the gunman entered Robb Elementary, the officers move in on room 111.
Okay. Let's get kids. Kids, let's get kids. You okay? What's your fire? Kids.
The board tech commander, he finally gets the right key from a school employee, puts it in the door, opens the door.
Okay. Very, very, very important to not gloss over that, because everybody says the door was probably unlocked. But
how wouldn't the guy lock the door?
Nobody knows that. There is nobody in this world that will ever know that, because there are two people that would know that. One of them's dead. It's the shooter, who probably pulled the door shut once he got in there, by the way. And the other guy is the board tech commander, and he used a key to open the door. Now, here's where it gets tricky and interesting, because if you listen to Director McCaw's testimony in front of the Texas House and you read the documents, there was a team loaded up of 7 people making entry. The commander of Bortak turned the key, they opened the door, 4 of them made it in, the door shut, and the other 3 couldn't get in. So they engaged him in this firefight. They neutralized him because he shot at them, and they had to let the other 3 in. So tell me again how you know that door was unlocked, because you don't, and you never will, and you'll never convince me that it was, because if you're a good active shooter, you're going to shut the door behind you. That's the way it goes. And those
hadn't he gone to school there? Isn't there a chance that he returned to the classroom that he got bullied in? I mean, kids know with the door lock if they've been in there before. If he spent a whole year in there, he would know that. Not only had he gone to school there, he ran in on the way in. One of his former teachers recognized him. Let's not forget, he was 19, I think, or 20. It was right past his 18th birthday that he went out and it was one day after that he went out and purchased the firearm, which is why everyone's criticizing the law. Go ahead. He was 18, which means he was only 6 years removed from that classroom. And that was the classroom he was bullied in. It's all in that report. You can see, like, they go through his psyche, they go through his social media. He had he told his cousin that he had his shoes tied together and he fell flat on his face, and even the teacher laughed at him. That was a targeted attack on room 112. That was his revenge on everybody. And he took it out on those little kids, on the 19 and 2. And we're having this discussion because everybody wants to blame the cops for it. But that guy was determined to kill people. Yeah. That's exactly what he set out to do. How could there be any doubt about it? Why are we talking about whether or not he knew police were in the hallway? He knew how this was going to play out. He knew how it was going to go for him. He knew 10 days in advance. He was telling people online that he was going to do this. Somebody in Germany, because of the way German law works, they were literally brought up on charges of failing to disclose the knowledge of a future crime going to be taking place. So he made it perfectly clear to everyone. He was one of these types, one of these Columbine types, unfortunately, that knows exactly how it's going to play out.
This should, if you heard it right, they're saying medics first, like let the medics in. This means, everything's already secure, but let's get these medics in. Let's get kids. I want you to see the end here. This is the reaction that all of the guys had.
The gunman jumps outside of a closet and fires at Bortak officers at the front of the stack. He grazes one of them in the head. Multiple officers fire back and hits the gunman and kills him.
EMTs first! EMTs first!
What we later learn, and the state committee that examined the response determined, is that the door was likely unlocked this entire time.
How do you know that?
She has no clue. Okay, let's look at it. Very somber. Very somber. This is actual Trooper Chad Skidmore's body camera. And are they talking, celebrating, pointing fingers at one another? No. It is like they are vomiting, crying. This is not a bunch of people who chose cowardice and wanted to stand outside a classroom and let little kids get whacked. It's so far from that. And it's so fair. Look, when I say this all the time, when there's blame, we'll take it. But you can't take the whole blame. There's enough to go around. This should not have happened. There's no two ways about that. This is not 100% on any one entity. It doesn't work that way. So what do you do, John? I mean, like, this is the reality. This is the cold, hard reality of life from now on for them. I can tell you that when we were on the other show that we were on, and that other guy and I did a breakdown about this, after he and his former partner had already done one, I got a DM from somebody who was there, and he thanked me. He thanked me because somebody finally stood up for him. And it's not just the standing up part. It's the stuff I was, like the information I was giving, like, here's a cop helpline. Here are the signs that you should be thinking about. Look, if they weren't fully developed in active shooter training, what makes you think that they're fully trained in mental health awareness? And so he thanked me for that. I had the message. I'll show it to you, John. I'm not going to, or, maybe one or two people in the chat, but I'm not going to show it to anybody else. I got to respect his privacy because I know for a fact he was a sergeant. I know for a fact, as he said in subsequent messages, that he shared my message with his troops, and they started doing debriefs. They started going and getting help, and
you have to.
So, I'm not, obviously not in this for the money. If I were, John would be rich by now. But there is importance in talking about this, and there is importance in understanding that this isn't about excuses, or this isn't about like pointing fingers and criticizing. There's definite importance in about having these discussions in general.
It's also just not about dogpiling all your misplaced outrage onto someone that's an easy target to blame. Now, if you want to say that the response was unsatisfactory, fine. If you want to fire these guys, fine. But the way that these people are being treated by the press, which is just taking advantage of this, by the way, to sell commercials, they're cashing it. If you want to know who's actually taking money away from the dead 21 people in Uvalde, Texas, it's the people who said we'll be back to talk about it right after these messages. They're the ones who got paid for that. But there's real hate for these guys out there for the rest of their lives, not just in the mirror, but from everyone else in the country, from their own profession. As I said, this happened in the shadow of 2020. This was a time when police were coming under fire from the highest levels of politics, from the news every night. And what happened? They proved that a fundamental truth that's very sad in your profession, Drew, and that's that police officers eat each other.
Yeah.
And everyone turned their back on these guys before they even knew anything. You know, we were dealing with this every week in the news. Conservative guys on YouTube like you and me are saying, well, let's see what happened 10 seconds prior to this. Let's see the whole body cam. But this came out and immediately everyone said cowards. And they didn't wait to even ask if the door is locked or unlocked or even get to these details. They just immediately determined that, and they were convicted in a court of public opinion long ago. And trying to serve them up to a court of law right now will accomplish what? I don't know.
You have to step over a lot of facts to get to the blame, and when you step over those facts, they are very important. And you might want to make you may seem, or you may want them to be irrelevant, but they're not. They're very, very, very relevant. And like I said, it's a coupon thing. Like if the new PlayStation is $500, but I have a coupon that says I only need to pay $400, this is the same principle that applies for blame. I'm not going to take the full blame if I don't deserve the full blame. And it's not me personally. I'm just saying law enforcement. So there's a question of like, what would you have done different? Well, obviously the first person on the outside who started questioning whether there was a command post, or if there were several people questioning there was a command post, don't wait around. Don't wait for someone to tell you to do it. Establish one. And if there's another one going on, you will be superseded or you will be silenced or whatever, but at least there's two going on. And there has to be more communication with what's going on the inside and on, but again, you're up against communication breakdown by way of huge brick walls and large.
It's the first thing that breaks down in any situation, any critical incident of any kind. And by the way, critical incidents happen thousands of times every day in this country. You just don't know about it because the situation turns out okay. The situation is mitigated. The situation is not the worst disaster in the history of Texas. But communication is always the first thing to break down, and you can train and you can get better. And you could say, well, let's make sure everyone's on an interoperability channel, but managing radios, getting everyone on the right page, getting information out. It doesn't matter how much more technology we have. It doesn't mean that it's any better, faster, or more reliable than passing around a piece of paper. But I guess what I want to close with is that there's so many people out there that are always going to trash these people who responded. They're always going to dogpile on them. I just implore you to take a moment and put yourself in the hallway, put yourself in their shoes. And if you have any self-awareness at all, you're not going to have any arrogance. Say, could I have done a better job? Would I have been doing it differently? And look at the totality of facts, not just saying those idiots, I could have done better, anyone could have done better, because you don't know, you weren't there. And everything that you know about it's through the benefit of hindsight. As Drew has said before on the show, you know the answers to all the tests where they were taking it in real time. Go ahead.
Interview of Uvalde police dispatcher Gina Santillanes by outside investigator Jesse Prado. It says right in here, Samantha Diaz is currently in the police academy. She's not in the dispatch office anymore, but at any rate, she was handling landlines, non-emergency phones, and she has only gone over a few calls because it's triggering her.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to listen to it either.
Right. So she took the initial 911 call that came in as a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
And those little things too are the trigger, because you think, well, if I had done something different, then the butterfly effect would have cured the rest of it. But there's nothing that she could have done. I've been in that position where there's no convincing that you didn't cause this, but she didn't cause it. I mean, like,
yeah.
But there's very deep layers to this, and there's plenty of documentation out there. I would suggest just don't fall for the media's narrative on it. I mean, like, it's easy. It's low hanging fruit. Everybody hates cops. Everybody wants to blame the cops. And sometimes it's not even people that hate cops. It's just people that like, you got to blame somebody.
And it can't be Ramos because he's dead. So who else do we got?
Right. So last but not least, not guilty for Adrian Gonzalez, the one officer who was charged with 19 counts. And next up is Pete Arredondo, and the evidence that you see, and like Scott Peterson, the guy here in Florida from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, he was acquitted. You should check out a channel called Lawyer You Know. There's an attorney that interviewed Scott Peterson's attorney and Scott Peterson about specifically that case, about what they had to overcome to try to convince a jury that, look, I'm just a cop. I'm not responsible in this sense. There's a lot of different things that people don't think about. Like if you got a high school, you're dealing with 2 or 3 football fields worth of real estate, and you can't be everywhere at once. So it was an interesting episode, but look, I appreciate everybody hearing me out. I can definitely go more in depth at any point. If anybody has any further questions, I think we'll probably chop this episode up into 3 or 4.
Or if you watched it and you want to make a good point, Drew is super obsessive about the comment section. Make sure you leave a comment below, which is actually, if you like the show, a great way to help others see it. That's how you supercharge the algorithm, is by engagement. So make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, but also leave a comment. And if you have a good point, put it down in the comment section below. Drew will be staying up all night long.
Yes.
And he will go back and forth with you in the comment section. He leaves no comment unanswered because that also supercharges our algorithm when we reply. So thank you to everyone who watched us. We hope that we provided some insight. If we provided something for you to argue with, like I said, there's an avenue for that. Go ahead and go to the chats. And if there's interest in this one, well, then we'll return to it in the future, particularly since Arredondo is still indicted and heading towards trial. Date yet to be determined. If you liked us in general, make sure you check us out. The rest of the Comm Center, we've got a huge back catalog. Drew, thanks for this wonderful presentation. Thanks for taking a risk to talk about a subject that is very polarizing. And to everyone else out there, thanks for listening, keeping an open mind. Anything else?
Yep. 2 things. It's January 30th right now. I'm sorry, January 29th. January 29th, 2022 is a deadly day in law enforcement. It was the day John O'Keefe was killed. So keep him in mind, number 2490 from Boston PD. And a friend or a former employee of mine by the name of Abigail Rose Bieber was unfortunately taken from us on this day in 2022. So keep their families in your thoughts and prayers.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching the show. Thanks for hanging in there the entire 2 hours. If you did so, you're amazing. We'll catch you back here next week on the Comm Center. Drew?
10,000 episodes.